Over here. Thank you for coming, everyone. Appreciate that. So, my name is Chuck Pumpkin. I'm an associate researcher in the college, if you don't know me. Today we have doing an NSF career panel where we've got some current winners of NSF career proposals. And we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask some questions of them after we get started. But we'll go ahead and jump in right away. I'm going to ask you each to introduce yourself and then give a 1 minute description. That's a minute of your work, okay? And then you're going to get lots more time to talk about it, but just give what you can give in 1 minute. All right, so Jorge, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm an assistant professor of the Civil and Environmental Engineering department. I do, most of my work is focused on environmental chemistry. My career is about trying to understand what happens when microplastics are partially thermally oxidized, what happens with them in the environment. So rather with like affecting biochemistry cycles, mobility of them in the environment, and also some transport in soil.
That's it. Very good. It was 53 seconds there. Appreciate it. That's how we'll go over there and talk with us.
Oh yeah. Hello everyone. My name is Han Tao Choi. I'm an assistant professor with electrical and computer engineering. So my research is about like power systems engineering and modeling and simulation. Essentially, I study how we can use computational and numerical methods to study the impact of renewables on power systems. What if we have sudden wind gusts? What if we have solar eclipse? How would this impact the lights and the stability of the system?
Good, John.
Hello, I'm John O'Hara. I'm also with electrical and computer engineering. My career work is about 6G communication, wireless communication, and basically the channel effects in situations where you're using a long distance and very high bandwidth situations. So this would be like a replacement for fiber optics, we call it backhaul link, and experimentally verifying the channel behavior in those situations.
Very good. Ritesh.
So mine is Ritesh Sachan. I am assistant professor in mechanical and aerospace engineering. My work is actually primarily focused on creating a new family of new types of nanomaterials. This is called high entropy alloy nanomaterials. What we are doing is that there are so many combinations. So the way these high entropy are defined is that you have 5 or more elements, you mix them together in nanoparticles, which is very hard. So we are trying to develop a process and understand the mechanisms for the evolution of nanoparticles, of these type of nanoparticles, which can be used in catalytic applications primarily.
Good. All right. Thanks. I'm sure we're going to get to hear a lot more detail as we kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of the processes of how you got there. My first question, I'm going to have it open for anybody, but I'm going to want to hear from each of you as to how you address the question. But the career program requires the integration of research and education plans. How did you demonstrate that they were integrated?
I'll go. The way I did it, and maybe this is not the best way, but the way I did it was, in my field, to do 6G, it really requires a very broad spectrum of knowledge. So students, in order to be capable in this area, they need to know electromagnetics, they need to know spectroscopy, they need to know communication principles, RF, they need to know optics and digital signal processing. All that stuff comes together in 6G. And that takes time and effort to train students to be able to be functional in all that. And so my integration was about training the students in all these areas that are particularly tricky, I've found in my own experience, to master these things and bring them together for this type of research. So if I can create some sort of educational structure that assist the students in these particularly difficult bits, and then they will become functional in my research, in this research. And that was kind of the general approach to doing that.
Was this highly targeted in terms of the bits they needed, or was it holistic and
It was kind of targeted and holistic. So in other words, it was flexible that way. So the idea was to create modules for a particular expertise that is needed, and then I would train them on the enter that into the classroom basically, and allow me to train students on these particular things. And as the issue came up that was found to be very critical, we could do another module on that one, and another module on something else, and this would be folded into the classroom. I called them mission modules, and it seemed to work.
anyone else?
Yeah, so what I did is basically think about the whole education, and I would call it educational outreach and research as a whole thing that would not function without, like, one depending on the other one. So the premise of my work is based on a societal need that comes from open burning of solid waste. Okay, so for me that was, let's say, so easy connection in terms of societal needs and science. So the science questions are trying to understand the mechanistic part of that. But what I did is I contacted the program manager and said, okay, besides education, the education has to be only for students, or can it be also for farmers or other people that might be interested in the problematic of open burning of solid waste? So he said, no, education is education regardless of K-12, could be farmers and so on. So what I tried to do is to really have a program in which I could basically connect the needs of them through different objectives. So for example, I had like 3 objectives. Basically, one of them was to do some workshops about the problematic about what are the problems that come with open burning of solid waste, what alternatives we can establish for that. I also tried to do an education specifically for a high school program, which was about designing this device in which we can rapidly detect potential microplastics using very, very cheap components. So then I don't have to be like super advanced science that I was doing in the research part, but I was just trying to get excited those high school students with something that is a connection with what we're doing, right? So then, like using our cell phone and a box and a little bit of fluorescence, I proposed to, of course, I try it first, but to implement this in workshops. And the last one, if I remember correctly, oh yes, I directly work with CEAT, like the workshops that they have through Native nations, and I did that precisely because most of the remote places that have the struggle with open burning are Native or rural communities. So OSU has a program that gives science workshops in the summer to all the tribal nations in the state. So I'm basically connecting that with this. Once this device is set up, I can do these workshops with them. So that's what I did.
So one important part is like the integration right here. So what I did, some of the tasks you have to cross-link. So if you have a research task, so you have to somewhere connect it to the education activity. As John was saying, that my research was like that has so many experimental components. So the students must be learning so many different techniques. So if you are involving some, let's say, high school students or undergraduate students, you can actually specifically say that they could be involved in this particular research activity. So that integration, they want to see that that's there or not. I mean, some places, I mean, I had a previous experience where one of my earlier attempt was that they were too discrete. So you have research activities and education activities are totally different. So if they don't see the integration, that will be a problem.
Yeah, I took a similar approach to integration. So the question I asked myself was, how can this research be useful for education outreach, and how can this education component be useful for my research? So using my proposal as an example, the research is to do so-called multi-time scale modeling of the renewable energy models, like the converters using, say, Fourier series, and turning them into like parallelizable simulations. And the challenge I observed during my classroom interactions with the students is that when teaching these power engineering concepts, there is a mixture of mathematical derivations, which are rigorous, and engineering assumptions, which are somewhat ungrounded, but I would say it's kind of wittingly done. So I try to, the component I propose is to separate these two parts. Tell the student, hey, these are the rigorous mathematics we derive, and this is the engineering practice, because data is provided in such a way so that computation is easier. So the way to prove that my research is integrated with the education is to say that this part of the research is going into that module of the lecture. So I also propose to develop some of the hands-on materials for outreach. That is to create these solar DIY kits where some of the high school students can use this building blocks to put together some, say, garden lighting systems or solar flow charging systems, so that they can bring home and improve their renewable awareness. So essentially, it comes back to how research and education can be useful to each other.
Very good. It's very helpful. A little shift in scope now, thinking about the feedback that you might have received from NSF directly, interactions with the program director, project manager, and so forth. Can you tell us about, and this is totally up to you to respond in any way, I'm not going to make you answer, but we'll come back to that in a little bit, but talk about the communication you have with NSF. How is it helpful? How did you benefit? And how would you talk about that a little bit?
So, my case was a little unique in some sense, because I didn't contact any program manager, because I was hesitant.
None? Not at all?
No.
Okay.
Usually people do contact me. It's not like I have never contacted a program manager, but in this particular case, that actually is related to one of your other questions too, so probably I'm answering ahead of time. The reason was that I was confused between the which program I should submit my proposal. So there were two potential programs, and I'll give more detailed answer of that later. I think I was a little late when I started preparing the proposal. Although the idea was clear, but when I was writing, so I thought like, okay, if I'm just going to contact in March, what's the point? They're not going to give very sort of detailed insight on that. So I didn't contact the program manager.
You actually could have heard the worst thing. You could have heard them saying no.
So yeah, you may have the worst case, but even that can succeed in getting.
Yeah, I'm glad you went first in this, so that's awesome. Nowhere to go but up, I guess, right? Anybody else have interactions that they had with the program, with NSF directly?
I spoke to the program manager before and after each try extensively, and I thought that was very valuable. So you can bounce off the ideas for the program manager to see if it's a good fit for the category of their program. That was helpful. You can convey enthusiasm to the program manager, and that's very helpful, at least in my opinion. And if you talk to them enough times, they're probably going to remember you when the review comes up. If they had a good interaction, that's probably helpful too. But yeah, I did receive good feedback every time I spoke to them. And every time, at least for me, I know this isn't universal, but at least for me, they were very helpful each time I spoke to them.
You spoke. This isn't like email.
This was a telephone call, half an hour long.
Any face-to-face?
I was not able to do that.
Did they Zoom or was it a phone?
Zoom.
Zoom, okay.
Zoom or phone, depending
Yeah.
on the situation.
Jorge, or
I was in a similar situation then. In my proposal was either environmental chemistry or environmental engineering, but I did not take the risk, and so I contacted environmental chemistry program manager, and she told me, Jorge, this is not as you're portraying right now, which is kind of difficult because you submit your project summary, and you might not be have that polished version with all the little comments that come from all your external reviewers that you decide to to have review your proposal. Anyhow, you send a preliminary project summary. She said, Jorge, this is not enough chemistry. Talk with your program manager of environmental engineering. So I did. And luckily, we were attending the same conference, so I was able to set up a meeting in person with him. And he reviewed my project summary again, and he's like, no, this is environmental chemistry. I'm like, she just told me that this is environmental engineering. Like, let me talk with her.
That's what I didn't want to hear.
Yeah, so it's like, let me talk with her. It's like, okay, we decided that it's more environmental engineering. In any case, it gets funded, or we can do a double program, a joint program. But I definitely spoke with them. I definitely got their feedback. In fact, I think after talking with the environmental chemistry, I got okay, I need to be more specific in the project summary. That was the first thing that I got from that. So I tried to work much more in my project summary right away before even sending it to my.
Chip away any ambiguity.
Yes. It's like this is too vague. I don't get the mechanistic part. So right away I got some feedback that was valuable for the long run. I contact them. In March, April. So it's not with a huge amount of time.
Just adding one more thing. So it's actually important that if they are aware of your work, and the way it happened in my case, there was another program I submitted. My proposal was similar lines. It wasn't funded, but the comments I got, they were encouraging it with some corrections. So I had some feedback from another proposal, and at least NSF was a different program, but finally the funding I got was from advanced manufacturing and this DMR from metal structure. So part of it was funded from the other program that I earlier submitted. So there was interest, and they were aware of my work, but I directly didn't contact them.
Yeah, I did contact the program manager, but in my case, I had a previous regular grant from the same program, and for the topic that I'm working on, it's pretty clear cut about which program I want to submit to. So I essentially sent out the career summary to the program director, and he gave me a green light, and I just sent it out. So it wasn't involved in the conversation.
Were any of you able to submit early, or were you working right up to the last minute?
I had it ready a week.
Say it again?
I had it ready a week before.
A week before? Okay.
Can you say that again?
Yes, please. Yes.
One day before, I actually had COVID when I on the deadline day, so one day earlier, and I was ready, but I couldn't do my
Last minute. John, you were saying?
Yeah, pretty much last minute. I mean, you definitely want to be done several days ahead of time and start uploading things, because the upload process almost never works flawlessly. And then you got a little bit of buffer to fix things like that. But certainly it was writing up until the last minute for the most part.
So sorry. Go ahead before you. I said for me, I think one of the things that stressed me the most about proposals with working with collaborators, which I enjoy working with my collaborators, don't get me wrong, but it's the fact that a lot of people work last minute, and I do not work well last minute. I get overwhelmed or too stressed. So then I said, okay, this is my proposal, this is my timeline. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna do it the way that is chill for me. And I was like I purposely do that because I know that the system gets saturated and is so I did it for mental health.
Yeah, for me, the proposal narrative was ready for a couple weeks before that. But I always find things to fix. That's the issue, right? And even the last minute, I was able to find a collaboration letter where the collaborator graciously put something very, very like that speaks very highly of my work, but I have to take that part out. So in the very last minute, I got some from how to fix that letter.
Okay, I have one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the audience for questions that you might have. I'll have some that we can follow up later. There's a big long list, and I know they think I'm going to ask everybody these questions. I'm not going to. So, but I do want to talk about something kind of that is pretty important to the core. One of the things we already talked about, the education plan. The other piece I want to visit on now is sort of the role of evaluation when you achieve the metrics. Did any of you include an external evaluator on your proposal? And if not, what kind of evaluation did you propose?
You mean another somebody reviewing your proposal or the evaluation?
Evaluate any of it. Did you include an evaluation component at all in your
I did. It was more like so you have to make a matrix. What are the criteria? I didn't have any external one, but there was a component you define the matrix that what is going to be your matrix. If something is not going right, how you're gonna fix that? Those type of things. I mean, in industry, you have this evaluation matrix, which there are a couple of models you can find online. So there it is like if you are reviewing your project progress weekly or monthly, so you can fix that right away. Or there is a waterfall model which you actually fix after a certain time, like 6 months, which is harder. So you have to do it more dynamically if something is not working. So you have to take the action right away and then modify the approach. So there was a evaluation matrix which I followed, but no external.
I did not add an external evaluator component, but I did have like the metrics of what meant success in terms of timeline, and also I added specific potential pitfalls section. So then I could say, well, if it's not working, this is the plan A, plan B. So I did have that specific potential pitfall. I call it potential pitfalls.
John?
I did not propose an external evaluator. I actually didn't put all that much in there about evaluating my own stuff. Maybe it was just the nature of my proposal that it was mostly experimental, and I've been doing this for a long time, so maybe they assume you can do that stuff. The stuff I'm doing is a hole in our research area. It just has to be done experimentally, and it hasn't been done yet. And I'm a very good experimentalist in that area, I guess. Maybe that was good enough, right? We're doing a lot of different things, so if one of them failed, there's still 4 other things to do. And it just never came up.
I didn't talk about the external evaluator regarding the research part, but for the education part, my proposal reviews dealing with some criticism about not having the metrics for evaluation. And the reason is that I put in some education component development, which is essentially to rewrite some of the chapters so that the mathematical parts, the engineering assumption parts, are more clear to undergraduate students. But the criticism was that how do you evaluate the effectiveness of this part? So I'm liking that, but I got
I'll find it anyway.
So one thing which about this point, I included on that one good way is to do surveys and interviews. So that's one way to kind of make your education plan more effective. That if you propose something like this.
Okay, so I'm going to pause now and kind of turn it over to you. I'd like to hear you ask questions, anything you like. There they are. Have at it. Please, right in.
I'll ask my question because it's very related to this last one. In a recent workshop on career, you talked a lot about advisory boards. And I guess this is kind of similar to an external evaluator, but a lot of the proposals we reviewed had the proposer says, I'm going to have an advisory board to kind of guide me on what to do or provide feedback. Is that something that you heard from program directors or you've used or you've seen in proposals or you've used in your own proposal?
I wouldn't call it an advisory board, but if since the career is something that you should be like proposing something novel and so on, and then some areas that are not necessarily like have like some published work, I did have specific collaborators and letters of support that say this person is gonna make sure that this part is sound, or like it's gonna help me with this. Let's say that like a modeling thing. I'm not an expert in modeling, but I found a collaborator that will be willing to, let's say, support my proposal in that regard. So then for each of those, let's say, 3 aspects that I was proposing, I had like a letter of support instead of an advisory board.
I did the same thing. No advisory board, but definitely letters of collaboration where I'm not strongest. And I probably should add more detail because they wanted more details in that area as well. But we got through anyway. I have heard of advisory boards on other types of NSF proposals, but I've never heard of that on a career.
Yeah, I mean,
In career, that's actually probably negative because what they want you to do is to make like an independent career. So if you have advisory board or in fact like too many collaborators, that's another thing which you don't want. So don't put too many collaborative letters. Right?
Well, they made us review multiple successful career proposals that had advisory boards. So I guess it's maybe dependent on the
So the different programs work differently. I mean, I had somebody advised me the same, and I did put some collaborator letters which were not needed, like this technology development center. I personally speaking, now I'm more, I understand the program better. So if you have something developed, it's gonna happen. So you don't have to put that they support your work type of thing. So I mean, and this is not universally true. I mean, it's a case by case basis. So I'm not discouraging that completely. So but if you put too many, there can be a criticism that you are relying on too many collaborators or people to do your work, and that's not good either. So there is always a balance. Advisory board, in my opinion, especially in career proposals, is something.
I share the same view, at least in my area. I would say it may be helpful to demonstrate you have collaborators and mentors, but having an advisory board might imply that the board need to convene on a regular basis, and it's like directing a large project, which is the opposite of a career. I've seen like DOE projects which exclusively require an advisory board, which means like twice a year. Career type, at least in my
multi-PI proposals where you have those certainly need to have something like that.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your insights. My question is, how long into your career in OSU will you be faced submitting a career grant? And also, how many times did you have to? If you have to apply more than once.
I submitted first time in year 3, I think, and then 4, and then 5. So 3 times submission.
You go ahead. I have a longer answer than that.
I did it in year 2, and I studied for once.
First time.
I did it in year 3 and I submitted once as well.
So I submitted in my first year because somebody suggested me, and I thought it would be a good idea. But in my opinion, I don't think that's a good idea because you are just developing your research, setting up your lab. Ideas are not so clear. Most of ideas could be coming based on your past work, and sometimes it may look like you're overlapping a lot from the previous group. My reviews were actually not too bad in my first attempt. This was actually my second attempt when I got this. So in my first review, in my first attempt, reviews were not too bad, and then it was like I should just fix those problems and submit again. But I sort of changed my research path to a completely new topic. In fact, like my research work was actually written in my reviews this time. It was a highly work. So this was totally a new topic. And my year 2, when I was thinking like, should I give my second attempt with my previous one, or I was still developing my ideas on my current one which was funded on this. So I was confused, so I planned to drop that. In my third year, I submitted again with my newer idea. I was more excited about this one. So it was my second attempt on a new topic. So don't hurry up too much, because you are still throwing those ideas.
Ritesh, you stepped into an important topic. Does anybody else kind of concur with that idea? Don't try to do it right on. Nobody else said anything about it. Is year 1, your first year, too soon?
It definitely was for me. But I was coming out of business back into research in year 1, and that would have been kind of a poor transition. So I had to establish some things and once again get research moving again for a few years, and then I could attempt something like that.
I wouldn't say that it's related with the year, but more with the amount of preliminary data and hypotheses. The strongest the way that you're developing your hypothesis. So if you come as a research professor and then you go on your first year and then you already have your path clear and then you have preliminary data that supports each of those hypotheses, you might have a very, very good chance in your first year of tenure. However, like most of us, we need to establish the lab first. So just make sure that you have enough preliminary data, in my opinion, to support each of those hypotheses, and enough bandwidth in your network so you can do some cool stuff in terms of the education and outreach component. So more than the year is how are you set up and established, which sometimes comes with time, but that's it.
To me, I also think it's a little riskier to do it in year 1, unless you have a very clear idea about how to structure a 5-year project in terms of research, as well as the education part. For me, I don't think I wouldn't have been ready in year 1, especially regarding the education component. I wouldn't have identified what's missing in the current classroom and outreach activities. So having these preparations definitely help.
I don't think I have met any first year tenure professor that has gone the first time. So I would say waiting a little bit is wiser.
Yes, sir.
I have a question related to the preliminary results. So I've heard that it can go both ways, right? If you don't have any, then that's not super supportive of your idea, right? If you have too much, then maybe it seems like, what's the point? So if you have like an idea of what's the balance, like how much?
Give them enough, this is what mentors said, give them enough that they can taste how good your soup is, but not give them the entire bowl. Okay? So just give them a taste of how good it is. And then like a right direction, right? So for example, I'm going to give you an example. So I had this hypothesis in which I thought microplastics that are partially oxidized or thermally oxidized will be able to release more phthalates or additives from the plastic. So I didn't want to give them that entire idea, but what I did is I used organic carbon, dissolved organic carbon as a surrogate, right? So then it's nothing specialized, nothing like that, but I was able to prove with organic carbon that in fact, thermally oxidized microplastics were releasing more of this stuff, which can lead, I didn't dive into the characterization or and so on, but those little pointers that can give you that taste of the okay, this hypothesis is well founded. That's the trick.
So, also related to what Jorge said. So, I'm curious to know how much overlap has been in everyone's career proposal with proposals or work they've done before, because we've heard a lot about NSF wants to diversify their portfolio. So, are you kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you have NSF proposals that are related to your career that you're submitting and you have gotten funded, or on the other side, are you shooting yourself in the foot if you don't have that much expertise in what you're proposing your career on? And what kind of overlap is appropriate?
I think it would depend on what the proposals were. In my case, I had a successful MRI proposal that gave me $1 million worth of equipment that I leveraged for the career. So that was clearly a benefit to it, right? It wouldn't have even been possible without that. On the other hand, if you were just repeating or rinse and repeat sort of what you've already been doing, that's probably going to be seen as less novel, and less high risk and high reward. So I really think it depends on the exact situation. You have to play ear by ear in those. But I think it's like what he said is you want to prove that you can do something. You want to show that you're capable of doing so. There's preliminary results. A previous NSF proposal would be preliminary results, especially if it was productive, right? But then you also have to shoot a little higher in the career. So I think it can work to your benefit as well.
So I think the right answer it depends, right, on the situation. So about the preliminary result, I mean, what is sufficient is that they should be able to convey that you have a background in this area and you have the right capability to conduct your research, whatever you're proposing. So more than something, what I did with the preliminary result which you already have produced, they cannot be like a proposed work, right? So you have to make a distinction that this is a preliminary result, this direction I'm planning to go in, that these are the proposed tasks which I'm going to do. So that's the value of preliminary result. Some of these single PI funded projects you already have, they may, if there is like a little bit overlap, basically they're used as preliminary work, then they're fine for a career proposal. Career proposal in general is much broader because you have a bigger educational component compared to a regular NSF proposal. So that's a much broader project. So little bit overlap is fine. Actually, that actually can be in your benefit that you want to use the research in broadening the research activities as well as education activities.
Just one thing to add, that is when I got my first, and our area is a rather closed area, so everyone pretty much knows everyone else's work, and there's just one focus program that was submitted to. So when I first got my grant from that EPCM project, a friend called me saying, he said, "Congratulations, but why didn't you submit this as a career proposal?" What he implied was that it's kind of difficult to generate different ideas for proposals, especially when you're submitting to the same program, and that is somewhat true because I spent a lot of time crafting the idea that I want to submit for a career just to avoid first overlap with the previous project, and second leverage some of the results from the previous one. So it does take some time. So the way I did it is I start from very high level. If I want to use 3 words to describe my research, I would put modeling, simulation, computation. My first one is on parallel computation of some millisecond level dynamics. Now I want to conquer the next mountain, which is microsecond level dynamics. So I started from there by doing some decomposition. I tried to link this back to what I had, but not to overlap with it. And about the preliminary data, when I sit on the other side of the table, that is as a reviewer, I always want to see that preliminary data, which is have a taste. So in my example, I'm proposing using some bipartite graph to eliminate some dependency in some electromagnetic transit circuits. So instead of demonstrating using preliminary result on a very large system, I used a 7-component circuit but has all these RLC current voltage sources, and I showed that these can be reduced to 3 equations by this. So hopefully this will be useful to a 100,000 node system. So along that way.
Yeah, thanks, Scott.
Kind of shifting directions a little bit. With the educational plan, did any of you incorporate senior design into how you could make your integration into education with your research?
I think I did.
I didn't either. If you can integrate that, that's a good. That can be a good activity.
So I have a question regarding the research part, and I got already, the point of view from Antal, but I would like to hear from the rest. So when you just develop the research part of your proposal, have you been focused more on explaining the problem, formulating the problem, and lay out the problem, or the focus was more on solution part? How the solution looks like, or the combination, or which the weight of which should be higher? Shall we maybe focus on explaining the problem, formulating the problem, showing that okay, this is the problem, and just a little bit about our solution, or just mention the problem and mainly focus on explaining how the solution looks like?
I would say you want to speak the problem in as few words as possible and as direct and quickly as possible. And then, at least by the reviews I got, they seem to always like more detail on what you're going to do and the innovations that may arise from it. The problem should be you don't want to spend 3 pages describing a problem. It's too complex. You can say the problem very simply, say here's our multi-part solution to it, and make the details there. I think in my experience with the reviewers, they want the details of what you're going to do and what's going to happen from it, how it's going to produce innovations.
I sort of agree with John. It's, you have to define the problem well in the simplest of the words, so that they know what would be the solution. So if the problem is not clear, that would be another problem, right? And that has to come in the first 2 pages. So if you are still dragging it, then that's not a good idea. Just define the problem and justify why you are offering this solution. This is what it is. And then spend a good time in proposing what you want to do and how you want to solve this problem.
Yeah, I would say make sure that they can see the bigger picture of the problem, because even though there are reviewers in your area, they might not be as versed as you in your own proposal, but also make sure that in the problem you point out the specifics as quickly as possible. So the balance is much more about what you are proposing to do and less of what the problem is, but very, very crisp and clear background. The other thing that I did is, if I remember correctly, I added a rational part in each of the objectives. So then I was able to go in depth in the mechanism to explain the specific problem and how the hypothesis was developed for each of the tasks. So that also helps as well.
I'm going to jump in real quick. You guys aren't necessarily representative of the typical first time up they get it. Most of the time, we had 11 submitted this past year, 2 got it. So many of the folks that are here in the college are perhaps sitting on some bad news, right? They did not get it. So tell me how you kind of, those of you, when it was not funded, what's the response? How do you respond to that? I mean, do we go through all 8 phases of grief? I mean, walk us through turning that success. Maybe there's 10 stages of grief, I'm not sure.
10 days at least.
10 days. Okay. Any recommendations? Because folks, that most people are not going to get good news on their first try.
Take a week off from it and grieve, I'd say, and then get back to work, I guess. Like I said, I called the program manager immediately and discussed the results and had a discussion about what the reviewers said and the panel summary and all that stuff. And tried to get as much information as I could and reevaluate, see if your topic was the problem or the way you presented it was the problem. Remember that the next round of reviewers may be completely different and they might take the exact same proposal and rate it all differently, so you can't fix everything.
So you found the program manager was very open to your call following the rejection?
Yeah, the program manager for me was very helpful. And I also found, like I said, the reviewers, it feels very random to me. One thing, the first time I did it, I had one very high score and other good scores. And so then I thought, oh, I'm on the right track, I'll redo that proposal. And then it got rated much lower the next year. Okay, I fixed all the problems and now it's rated lower. So,
you called their program manager after that?
Of course, yeah. Don't complain, just say, I'm trying to understand.
So that's important, actually. You said it kind of quickly, but I mean, you could have easily made yourself kind of taken an adversarial perspective, but you didn't.
Yeah, I think the goal is to learn from it, right? To learn what you can learn. And so, maybe you just don't take it all too seriously. You're going to try again. You're going to do all the work again. And maybe the review panel will be better the next time. And some of these things are just out of your control, so unfortunately, right? As good a job as you do and as hard work as you put in, it might not work out. And then the next year it might.
So if you were, if you think like you're gonna repeat the same topic, it's actually not bad to have, because you have some reviews now. So there's some feedback. So program manager is one of the person. Another, I find our faculties are actually very supportive. I can say from Canada. So first time when I had my proposal was declined, I actually had a chat with one of my senior faculty in the department and just discussed these are reviews. They may not be the people experts of that field, but they know their experience and they know how reviews are sounding like. So they can suggest you that whether what you need to improve. So talking to somebody is, just take a thorough look on the reviews and then take a break and then talk to somebody, and then probably you will be ready to actually fix the problems and submit the same proposal again. I did a different proposal, but that doesn't mean.
The other thing is, this is what the NSF program manager told me, is if you're in year 3, you pretty much have better odds than if you're in year 1, the first time you submit it. They're looking for a reason to fund good proposals, and they know it's your last chance, and they take that into consideration. So I think your odds slightly improve with each time you try, at least according to what I've heard.
See, I understand. I got lucky, right? First time, but you see my record of declined proposals is pretty bad, right? So it's like 3% success rate, and you gotta keep on trying. The thing that I told myself is that I think the grief with the career, I think it comes with what is all this surrounding environment that comes with it, which is the prestige, and everybody talks about the career, and so your expectation grows. So then if you're expecting that the expectation is way higher, then the fall is of course higher. So what I said to myself is, just think about this in terms of money. It's at 550 for my case, and 550 $1,000 proposal is nothing compared to an R01. It's nothing compared to a DOE. It's nothing compared to some EPA. So it's a medium-sized grant in terms of money, right? And then from that point of view, I think I was able to release a lot of that unnecessary stress and pressure that we put on ourselves automatically because everybody talks about the career. And I think writing the proposal from that perspective, I think helped me.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I just want to, just from where you start, do you think that the amount of funds requested kind of influence the success of your grant? Because some people get millions, for example.
Well, I mean, I talked with the program manager and he says the cap here is 550.
Okay.
That's the cap. So then you cannot ask for more, for less. You should try to establish the 550 and that's it.
Okay.
You don't get.
I think others get more than 550
Sorry.
for career grants.
No, I mean, it depends on the program,
Okay.
right? So then
Okay.
you gotta talk with your program manager
Okay.
or program officer and say, what is the recommended budget?
Okay.
You don't go and just ask for millions and millions without first talking with the program manager.
Sometimes program actually come back to you, on an average is 500K. So sometimes if you have little more than that, they actually ask you to curve it and make it 500K. So that also happens in some of the programs. So mine wasn't like that actually. Mine was the other way around. He somehow thought I'm asking less. Then I told him, no, this is what I need. Yeah, I think he was confused. But on an average, this is what you get.
The program manager told me ask for around 500. And if you don't, you better have a very good reason for it, and you better justify that strongly. I have heard of people in similar programs getting over 800, and it involved a lot of buying of equipment. That was pretty surprising to me, but it happens.
The program I submit to also caps it at 500, usually no more than 510, pretty much 500. But I think so that the scope has to be adjusted accordingly. It has to be some fundamental research, right, that fits in the budget for 5 years.
So usually it's like 1 month summer salary and 1 student support. This is very average.
So we've talked about a lot of different topics, but I'm sure there's some burning, passionate advice that you would want to be telling yourself if you were there. So we talked about a lot of stuff, but what other advice? Are there things that we've not talked about that the audience hasn't asked about that you would advice that you would be giving for those applying for a career award, perhaps in this coming July? What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I can go first. So if you need a little bit of motivation, this is what you can do. So close your eyes, start dreaming. Congratulations, you're being awarded a career award. Now you need to write 15 pages out of a 5-year plan. Okay, this is reasonable, right? Start thinking about what kind of 3 thrusts you want to structure, what kind of maybe 2 or 3 education components you want to write out, and do really get into both the high level and the details. Convince the reviewer this is what I'm going to do. Always think backward. But I think one of the best advice I got for the career proposal is that you don't want to start something brand new. So think about what is your core strengths. So if I look at my work for the past 10 years, it has been on modeling and simulation of power systems. So I know AI is trending. I have some temptation to get into the AI, but I've resisted that. I haven't gotten a lot into the AI because I think there are many unsolved problems in modeling and simulation. So think about what's your best strengths and how can you take it to the next level, both for the field and for your personal development. So hopefully that will be useful.
One of my advice would be as I was saying that I was confused which program I should submit. Talking to program manager, you may get a very positive response. you may get a response. So I was between CMI and DMR program because my research is on materials development, materials science basically. So you may get response from CMI saying that it's more material science focused. So go to DMR, they may say other way around. In the proposal itself, and at the end they both, partially funding that project. What we can do, and my topic was so new, so I started looking at which program has funded proposals on this topic. I found only 5 proposals funded there, and 3 of them were actually funded from CMI. And so in my first page, in my first paragraph, I actually wrote that somewhere, that just to justify my submission in this program. So you have to, to search how many proposals have been funded on this topic, from which program. That could be helpful to decide.
I would say, of course, this is style, right? But I would say have a timeline of your writing calendar. So how do you deciding identify what are the more productive time of your day? What is the most productive time of your day in terms of writing? For example, for me are the mornings. Okay, so what I decide to do is I write in the mornings, okay, and I have like this set up. So if you're like missing some information, and this works for me for all the proposals, do not go ahead and try to look for that information that you're missing. Just put a comment right there on your side, and then keep writing. Go ahead until you cannot write anymore. Then use an allocated time slot to look for all those papers that you want to read or information about. Because if not, it's very tempting to just go in a rabbit hole if you're looking for information, and then your writing gets totally off. Okay, take some notes and whatever. When you open again your document, then take a time just to edit, like what you wrote the day before. Okay, then incorporate the data and so on and so on and so on. That for me works wonders. What I do as well is I count the number of words, like just to motivate myself. So then I have like a chart, right? So then I can see, oh yeah, this day I was very distracted or whatever. Well, that's for me because I'm like, I like that type of structure to get myself motivated. The other thing, second and most important thing besides your writing structure, which could be this or could be whatever, is find a set of peer reviewers that give you critical and top feedback. As I said to my other peers that have applied that, don't look for, like, you don't need more advice of your mom because your mom already thinks that you're awesome, right? So then you need someone that really gives you that feedback that it's like, oh man, this is like tough, but it's good, right? So look for different experts on different topics and the different objectives that you have, including an educational expert, so they can really tear apart your proposal. Okay, that's the second for me that is very important. And the third one is have enough preliminary data to support each hypothesis. For me, that's a critical part. Regardless of your submission time, if you have a strong setup of science that proves your hypothesis have a good direction, not necessarily right, but are in the good direction, that works wonders. So then, for me, those are the three core things that I feel very passionate about.
John, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I got 45 seconds.
You have
right?
45 seconds.
I would say make sure you pick a topic that is universally accepted as high impact. That would be a real bummer to go after something and all the reviewers say this is meaningless. Make sure you convey your ideas, the problem, and your general approach, and your education, integration, and all that within the first 1 to 2 pages clearly. If they lose interest by page 3, you're done. They're not going to go over it in depth. So make sure you get everything very clearly in the first 3 pages, maybe 2 pages. I probably spent half my proposal time writing the first 2 pages. No kidding on that. And then I would say go to that DARPA Hellmeyer Catechism. It's very useful for strategizing the format of a proposal. I think that's a good framework to start
Say
with.
that again. I'm not sure, folks.
The DARPA Hellmeyer Catechism. It's like these are the things you need to think about when you're writing a proposal. I think that's very useful. I would second that. Give it to all your friends in your department and force them to read over the first 3 pages at least, and just rip it to shreds over and over again until it's seamless. And then they'll be willing to read the rest of the proposal in earnest. If you don't get past that point, it's done. And I would say that's also from experience as a reviewer at NSF.
Folks, thank you so much for being with us this afternoon and sharing your insights. Let's thank our... They will be available afterwards, so if you want to come up and visit with them directly. Also, we did have a 5th panelist, Dr. Ozu from Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering. She is on bed rest now with an incoming new little one, so hopefully she's continuing to do well, but she's also available. We also have a number of other career awardees within the college that would certainly be open to your call. So with that, we'll give you the rest of your afternoon. Thanks a lot for coming today.
Thank you.